everyone. Welcome to Unmasked, where things are discovered, uncovered, brought to the light, and made known. I'm your host, Lamar Barrett, coming live to you from PG County, Maryland. If you're interested in finding out about the untold stories behind being a college coach, this is the show for you. Being a former assistant men's college basketball coach for 16 years, there are so many untold stories behind the scenes in the life of a college basketball coach. Now, let's unmask them. Today's guest is a former co-worker, not once, but twice. We actually was fortunate to work at the Hoop Group back in 07. I was there for 07, 08 for the summer. And then we also worked at Hofstra together for 3 years from 2016 to 2019. And, probably I wouldn't have been at Hofstra if it wasn't for Mike Farrelly. He actually the one who initiated the call to ask me would I have some interest. So I always thank him for that. And then he's also a longtime assistant, a longtime friend. I mean, we've stayed at each other's houses and all of that. I consider him a brother. And he's also a New City, New York native. I want to say Mike Farrelly, who I consider a good friend, great brother. He's going to be our guest today. Let me tell you a little bit about Mike before we get started with him and bring him on. Mike Farrelly is a St. Joseph's graduate, where he played at St. Joe's with some very good players. Played for Phil Martelli Sr. At the same time, right after he finished his playing career, he went into the world of working, but he also got a chance to coach at his alma mater as the junior varsity coach for 3 years before moving on to Wilkes University for a year. And then I was fortunate to work with him at the Hoop Group. Like I said, he came in 2007. So I had a chance to work with him for a full year. And then he extended his time there to 2010 before taking a job at Mount St. Mary's, right in Emmitsburg, Maryland, when he was there for only 1 year, but he did a terrific job while he was there. And then on to Niagara for 2 years up in the north. And then 2 years there with the success they had, they moved on to Hofstra University, where he spent the last 7 seasons and just coming off winning the regular season and the championship at Hofstra. Would have been taking them to the NCAA tournament for the first time in almost 20 years and actually 19 years. So Mike has done a terrific job, and I want to welcome Mike Farrelly to the show.
LB, what's up, man? Thank you very much for having me. I'm looking forward to this. You say those nice things about me. I feel the same way about you. You did so much for me just when we got the Hoop Group and taught me so much about the business and relationships and meeting the right people. And we had a lot of car rides together and van rides and, nights in the dorms at TCNJ and all that sort of stuff. So I certainly owe a lot to you and certainly value our relationship. And I'm glad to be here with you today.
Appreciate that. So Mike, let's just, we're going to get right into it. So let's get unmasked. First question first statement I like to always say is, there's no handbook in being a college coach. Like, tell me about your first day, first week, first month after things are done with human resources, especially when no one gives you direction. That could be at any one of the places you started, but tell me what's that like? What's that like?
Very interesting. That's a great question. And I think of this maybe 2 different ways, LB. The one way is, I guess, if you're joining an existing staff versus when you are coming in as a new staff, like I did at Mount St. Mary's, I was kind of a new staff. And then when Coach Mihalik got the Hofstra job and we were a new staff, kind of taking over that program. So I guess the first thing I'll start with, if you're just a new assistant joining a staff like I did at Niagara, an existing staff, existing head coach, assistants, and all that stuff. I think the first thing that's important to do, the first couple of weeks and everything like that is building those relationships up. One on the staff side is figuring out what those guys are good at, what they need, how you can complement them in the best way. Maybe they're great with backcourt development, but they're not as good with, coaching shooting or front court development. Where can you kind of fit in from there? And that obviously just takes a little bit of time, in conversations that you have with them. Where do they typically recruit? What regions do they go after? What type of players does that staff like to recruit? I think that's a big part of it too, as to you can recruit all these guys, but if they're not the right for that staff, for that program, for what that head coach wants. So I think figuring that out as soon as possible is an important factor, from the recruiting side and where you fit in on the staff. Maybe you can bring certain things or then focus on certain areas that you can be good at. I also think in addition to that is the relationships that you're going to build with the players and, kind of making it a goal, maybe that first month that you're on campus. Okay, we got, 12, 13 players on the team, whatever it is. Can you go and spend 30 minutes with each of them, take them to Dunkin' Donuts, go eat a meal with them in the cafeteria, but getting to know those guys because so many guys, 18 to 22 years old, they're going to put their trust in you, but they might be a little bit reluctant if you don't have that relationship off the court and away from that. So the more that you can learn about them, what motivates them, what their goals are, I think that's an important part of it too, to get to know them. And then when you're telling them things on the court, whether it's, where you should be in shell defense or, how to use ball screen, I think that level of trust is definitely increased from there. So I think that's an important thing to do in that first, 30 days is get to know those guys a little bit better. When you're taking over a new program, I think it's different conversations of how do you lay your groundwork and your culture for the program. There was, when we got to Hofstra, there was only 4 guys on the team, so we had to recruit a whole new team. We could kind of do it the way that we wanted to, but it was a difficult situation. And people use that word culture a lot, and a great quote, Kevin Arnovitz is a great writer for ESPN. He wrote an article a couple of years ago and said, culture is not a saying on the wall of your locker room or a practice facility or anything like that. It's a living, breathing thing. It comes down to what do you encourage? What do you not allow? What do you reward people for? And, the people inside that culture, it's important enough to them to maintain that culture and to enhance that culture. So what do you do when you get a job? Is it, okay, well, this is what we tolerate from an academic perspective. Academics are going to be important here. You got to be on time for class and things of that sort. Basketball, it's no, this is the expectation for how much you're supposed to be in the gym. This is how hard we're going to go when we get here. This is the extra work that we're expecting you guys to do. But I think just kind of laying the groundwork there as a staff, when you get to be a new staff in a new place, that's probably what I would say is, whether it's first couple days or, obviously to lay the groundwork right away and over the course of that first month, how to operate.
Awesome. We all know that recruiting is the backbone, the lifeline of college athletics. But what would you say was your best and your worst recruiting story?
Oof. Good one. Best recruiting story. Okay, so I'll go back to Niagara on this one. Just this kind of stands out in my mind, but we recruited Jamal Robinson from Paul VI down there and did a good job recruiting him, late in his junior year. They had a great year that year, went undefeated in the WCAC. He was a key part to that team, recruited during the summer, had him up for a visit, had, with his parents. I forget if it was September or October, but sometime before that signing period, had a good visit. I forget if the visit was Thursday, Friday, Saturday, or Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Regardless, we called high school coach Glenn Farrelly, who I'd known forever from playing with Delonte West back in college. But we called Glenn on Monday and said, hey, what do you think? He goes, I think you went really well. I think he's really close. Because I think you should make a trip down here and try and seal the deal. And so Coach Mihalik and I are like, okay, sure. He's like, yeah, well, we have an open gym Wednesday. I think you should be here. This is Monday at, 3 o'clock probably. So Wednesday morning, this is Niagara where you don't have big budgets and you can't book a flight last minute. So I jump in the car and drive, and it takes me about 8 hours to get from Niagara Falls down to PBI. And then I watch the workout. Maybe they worked out 6 o'clock, 8 o'clock. I spent some time with Jamal after that, get back in the car, drive back up to Niagara Falls and, probably get in my bed at 4:30 in the morning. Which was great. It seemed crazy. It was, 16 hours of driving in a day was outrageous. I had a bunch of Mountain Dews and all that stuff that day to get through that. But it was rewarded because the next day Jamal called and committed. So it was that last, the final piece to the puzzle, and the straw that broke the camel's back. He kind of showed how much we wanted him in that situation. It was a heck of a day, but it paid off because we got a commitment 24 hours later.
You gave me your best and your worst recruiting. Go ahead. I didn't hear the worst. I'm sorry.
The worst? Oh, boy. A lot of those, unfortunately. Man, I'm trying to think. Maybe going back, we've had some bad ones recently. Those kids are still in college basketball, so I don't necessarily want to talk about those. But I guess one that really hurt was, and a lot of your viewers are going to know this kid's brother, but kid's name was Dwayne Russell, Arizona kid, really good point guard. We recruited him up at Niagara. was kind of a sleeper under the radar. Not a lot of people recruiting him. He grew up in Philadelphia, where we had recruited so successfully, and we had some ins with him. So we started recruiting him. Coach went out there to Arizona, came on a visit, loved it, came up down to us in northern Arizona. His brother is Duron Fats Russell. That's, the star at University of Rhode Island right now. So Fats was up on the visit. He must have been in 6th or 7th grade at that point. So we had Dwayne on a visit, and went great. And, it was a time where it's hard to get guys in Niagara and hard to get good players. It's not necessarily an easy job. And we did a great job recruiting them. And, I was getting a bad feeling coming down to it at the end of it. And he ended up committing to Northern Arizona, staying out there where he had gone to high school rather than coming back home, towards the East Coast. And it was crushing. It was you put so much into it, you put so much hope, and it was hard because we also didn't have a great second option at that point. So I think that's probably my recruiting advice is make sure you have multiple good options that you like. Don't just go all out for one, and if you don't get them, you're in a lot of trouble. So we don't get them, and it was just devastating. And where do you go from here? And it's late in the spring and all that stuff. So that had to happen in April. But the end of the story ends up being good because the point guard we took was Tajir McCall, who ended up being a really good player for us as a freshman. He started as a freshman at point guard at Niagara. He transferred to Tennessee State, was 2-time All-Conference there, 2-time Defensive Player of the Year, and has been in the developmental league, had a shot with the Nets, played with the Hawks developmental league team this year, and has had a great career. So it ended up being great and working out, but that time that was a hard one to take. And a couple of the ones that I won't mention from recent years that we've gone through. But you have those, and it's hard when you get so emotionally attached to a kid, to a situation. It makes it harder and makes it much more crushing on the back end. And again, if you only have 1 or 2 good options, it makes it even worse. That's why it's important, I think, to recruit good amount of numbers to be able to ease that pain a little bit if you don't get a kid that you really want.
What did you have to give up achieving your current level of success? I know a lot of times people don't understand that in the sacrifice of college basketball, but what did you have to give up?
Yeah, you know what? You give up a lot. First I'm going to say is a lot of money. I started as a financial advisor right out of college, and, I wasn't making a lot of money my first couple of years in that business. It's kind of a thing where in a sales career, it's going to take some time to get it off the ground. So I wasn't making a lot of money yet. I was hopefully headed to a good place. And then I went to working at Wilkes, which thankfully was full-time. I was lucky and blessed. A lot of people don't get a full-time job for their first opportunity. So I was probably 25 or 26 and had that. So, but, didn't end up making a whole lot of money until, we got here at Hofstra. Jobs at Hoop Group and the Mount and Niagara, they were all fine, but I wasn't, making what I could, in other realms. So I think that's first and foremost. That's how a lot of young guys get in. Like, you're not going to have as much money as your friends that are, working a corporate job and they want to go out to a fancy restaurant or go on a vacation, and you might not be able to because you don't have that type of money. So I think that's one major sacrifice that you'll make. Another sacrifice is just, in general, friends that you have. I got to be honest, I don't have many friends that are not coaches, not in college basketball. Most of my whole circle is, college basketball coaches, people I played with in college, and then other coaches that I've, gotten to know, throughout this business. So I don't have many outside relationships, which, is probably a detriment, something I wish I did have a little bit, but it just takes so much time that you have to dedicate to this business, and I've kind of made a choice now. I have the 2 young boys. My sons are 6 and 3, that all the time that I have away from basketball is going to go into my wife and 2 kids, so it's kind of a sacrifice that I've had to make, but it's been worth it because, I love it. I do have great friends that are in the coaching business, and I have an amazing family, so I'm lucky from that respect.
That's awesome. That's awesome. All right. What was your, and you're going to know this because it's funny in ways, like, what was your best and worst scouting report? Because a lot of people don't realize, like, you can have your best game and, like, not really, like, dang, I missed this, missed it on scout report. But then, like, you can have your worst game and, like, like, you could have the worst game and you thought your scout report was unbelievable. So, like, what was your best and worst scout report?
Oh, boy, that's a good one. Man, I've had a couple of these scouts now for a few years. Northeastern, it might be the most challenging scout that I have, and I've had it for probably 5 or 6 years here. Billy Cohen's an unbelievable coach, and they do a ton of stuff against our zone. They got a continuity. They got quick hitters. That he's always doing new stuff. So, and we played him 3 times the last 2 years. We lost him in the championship game last year, and then beat him in the championship this year. So, I feel like my Northeastern scout by this point is really good. He's always doing new and creative stuff, but I feel like I have a pretty good handle on that stuff. It always changes. He's always going to throw new wrinkles in there, but I do feel like I'm able to prepare the team really well when we play them, just because the experience I have and how much I've seen of them. The worst scout, boy, man, I'd have to think. I can't remember one that sticks out. I know we've had some stinkers. I had the Bonaventure scout this year. I thought we were prepared, and then we went in and lost by about 40. So I had that one. I had San Jose State to start the year. That was hard. That was our first game. Those are always a challenge because you don't necessarily know what they're going to do with new personnel and new players. But I thought I had a decent scout for that one, and we ended up losing to San Jose State our opening night. So I can't remember, necessarily a job. Doing a bad job preparing the guys. I can remember some bad performances. So I must not have done a good enough job to get those guys ready to go in those ones.
Biggest challenge you have experienced since you have become a college coach?
God, I think the biggest challenge is getting into Division I coaching. It's not an easy thing to do. It took me 3 years coaching as a volunteer, and then going to Wilkes, and then 3 years at Hoop Group, which obviously at that point especially was a great way to get involved in Division I coaching. So, it's not easy to get that opportunity at that level, and being full time, being on the road. When I got into the business, Coach Martelli's advice was, you need to be on the road and you need to be on the floor coaching. That's how you're really going to develop the relationships that you need, as well as developing as a coach. So, to be able to be Division I and full time and on the floor is a challenge. And there's how many spots? 350 schools times 3 assistants at each place. So do the math right there. 1,050 assistant coaching jobs in the country. Pretty hard. It's just a challenge to break in and get to that point. I think challenged on top of that, since I've been in coaching, I think recruiting is always a challenge. You go to different places and there's different niches and different things you need to do to be successful recruiting at certain places. I think recruiting is always evolving because kids are changing and what they want. Think about how important Photoshop edits are today, to some of these kids. That was something that 5 years ago wasn't important. It wasn't even a thing, and now it's a fairly important part of the recruiting process. So, and I think I've learned a lot as a recruiter. Probably one of my biggest challenges was I got so locked into recruiting an individual kid, but didn't do a good enough job recruiting the circle of the people around him. Parents, coaches, workout guy, AAU guy, high school coach, all this stuff. And that's one thing I learned with Elijah Pemberton and recruiting him. He just finished up almost a 1,000-point score for us. Had a great career, and we almost lost out on him because of a mistake that I made. When I started talking to Elijah, he said, it's going to be me and my dad, and my AAU coach is going to help me a little bit. So I focused all my energy on those 3 and never really talked to his mom. And then it got to, a week or 2 before the visit, and it was, oh, hey, my mom's coming on the visit. I said, I thought your mom wasn't going to be part of this. She didn't, all this stuff. So I had really screwed that up, and I didn't have a relationship with her. And so that was, and again, I built, high school coach at that point, everybody else around him, the entire AAU program, but I missed out on that one key connection. So kind of obviously taking that to the point of like, well, even if somebody says somebody's not going to be important during a recruiting process, make sure you get to them and make sure you're recruiting everybody in that circle. But I would say that's probably the biggest challenge, kind of learning that and just staying up with recruiting as things change, because situations can be so fluid and kids change from, 5 years ago to how they are today. So I think that's probably the biggest challenge.
Yeah, that's you're 100% right on that. I can't disagree with you in anything on that one. Do you ever find there are things about you that people misunderstand? Like, what are they? Like, I think you're going to be a bright head coach. So, like, but do you list things that people may misunderstand about you?
That's a great question, LB. I don't know. I think one thing is, and from working for me, I'm very hands-on and I like, getting my tasks done a certain way and all that stuff. I think I'm probably maybe not collaborative enough. I don't know if that's how outsiders see me. You know, I know that's certainly a flaw that I have. I try to be better with, but it's just, I don't know, in my nature, that, you know, I don't want to like to delegate or all that stuff. And it's probably to my detriment a lot of times because I put a lot on my shoulders, and sometimes it's too much, or because I do put this on, I'm not able to accomplish something else. So I think that's, again, I don't know if that's how, if that's being misunderstood. It's probably maybe something that some people know, but you know, people outside might not get the chance to realize. You know, I'm pretty quiet. I don't do a whole lot on, you know, social media, or, you know, I'm not out at events. You know, I'm never the boisterous one, the loud one, you know, out there watching games, I feel like. So I hope people think I do a good job. I'm not necessarily sure if they do, or, you know, all that stuff. But yeah, I think one of my issues is maybe not being a good self-promoter. You know, people have told me that, you know, the way that certain guys go. It's just not kind of in my nature. You know, I kind of want to try to do the best job I can and let the results speak for themselves. You know, so hopefully people, you know, realize the work that I put in, and you know, to try to get to this point.
Well, I like that. Now we're all educators, and we always talk about, you know, things with basketball. But like, what would you try to teach your players besides basketball?
For me, and this is a little bit to, you know, to my heart, but the financial aspect of life. You know, again, I was a financial advisor at 22 years old, asking people to invest their life savings with me, you know, and even though I was just new in the business and never, I didn't really know what I was doing yet. But, you know, I just think the way that you can manage your finances is so important, and getting off to a good start financially, if that's developing credit, you know, and paying your bills on time, so you build up your credit score and things of that sort. Starting with a bank account, and, you know, back when people had to write checks, how to write a check, things like that. You know, how to manage your money, how to save your money, what amount of money you should be saving, where should you save that? You know, you have enough in the savings account. When you're young, can you start a Roth IRA? You know, when you get a job, are you doing a 401k? You know, are you doing the right types of savings? I think that's something important. You know, and a lot of that stuff, they don't actually have, all of our players don't really have real money until after they graduate and are starting to get a job. But hopefully you can lay that groundwork when they're in college, and then obviously as you maintain that relationship afterwards, you know, checking up on these guys, making sure they're doing the right things to get them off to a good start financially in their lives.
What are your best and worst memories in coaching?
Okay. Best memory is maybe the recent one of winning the championship this year, you know, beating Northeastern a year after they beat us in that championship game. You know, being able to overcome that hump, win the first championship for Hofstra in 19 years was pretty awesome. You know, and it was just everything culminated in that. You know, 7 years of work that we've done here, all the great players that we've had, all the work that this team has done and that these players have done, was amazing to, you know, climb up on that ladder and celebrate. Obviously it got crazy when everything got canceled, you know, 2 days later, and not getting to experience the NCAA tournament, but that was amazing. And I'd say that was up there. You know, when we clinched regular season championships back at Niagara, that was amazing. When we've done it a couple times at Hofstra as well, those are great moments. Winning at UCLA this year was amazing. When we beat Florida State at the Paradise Jam in 2015, 2016, that was amazing too. But it would all be topped off by that. And then the worst are when you lose that game. You know, we lost to UNCW in overtime. In the championship game in 2016, you know, us and them, we were the best two teams all year, and we didn't play great that night. We had a pretty good first half. A couple guys played well, a couple guys didn't. But that feeling of, you know, because again, it was building towards that point, that to not be able to come through in that final game. And then last year against Northeastern, again, I think we were the best two teams all year long. We were probably a little bit more consistent than them in the regular season. They might have been a little bit more talented, a little bit more well-rounded. They might have had more pieces than we did. But again, you get so close to it. We played a horrible first half, had an unbelievable comeback in the second half, and then just didn't have enough gas in the tank. But I think back to that moment, sitting there in the Charleston Arena, and the devastation that was, you know, and then again, getting there after losing in 2016, losing again in 2019, just crushed. And obviously, you know, we had Justin Wright Foreman, an all-time great player at Hofstra, and you think, well, now he's going to graduate, and how do we get back there again? But it was motivating. It was also motivating to go the extra mile, to do the extra work, to put up extra shots with guys, motivated our guys as well, and got us to the greatest moments. So I guess from the sorrow comes great joy, and that was certainly the case over the last year.
That was awesome, man. That was definitely awesome. What was the most stressful situation you have faced?
Has to be recruiting. Just some certain recruiting, again, when you make those guys certain targets and they become so important to you. We recruited a kid last year, LB, when we were together, that I put a ton of effort into individually. We put a ton of effort into as a staff, and it was like making me physically sick as it was going on. It was just a bad thing. I let it get to me too much. It was super stressful. I was like, my skin was breaking out. I was in a bad place with it. So I think that was the most stressful thing. We didn't end up getting the kid, and it was kind of like an all-year saga. And just think about all the energy we put into it and the stress that kind of created. Certainly responsible for a good amount of the gray hairs that I have, but that was probably not the number one most stressful time.
Gotcha. Now this is kind of interesting because you probably had plenty of them. It don't have to be a name, whatever you want to do, but like, what is the strangest thing a player has done outside of the basketball court?
Oh man. The strangest thing somebody's done outside the basketball court. Well, you know what? I'll go back to a story. This wasn't strange. It's actually very, very sweet and naive and beautiful if you think about it. But I'll remember back to Niagara again. Tanksley and Wanye Green had a project for the religion class that they had to go to a religious service, not of their religion. So they came with Gina and I to mass at the Catholic church that we went to in Lewiston, New York, and they just kind of had to talk about what you did at church, when you came in, when you left, what people did, all that stuff. And so when we left, they had to write an essay about it, and I remember Amin's looking over his and saying, when we walked in, Coach Mike and his wife, they took the water, they took this water and sprayed it on themselves, this and that, thinking like, oh, it's holy water, we're blessing ourselves, but just Amin's, view of it, it was just so cool. It was so funny. There's a million funny moments with Amin Tanksley, that's for sure. That's one that stands out though. And just reading it and saying, oh yeah, Coach Mike and Gina they splashed the water on their face. And it was just a beautiful moment, man. That was something really, really
funny. Now look, you've had a chance to work, you worked for Coach Mahalik for 9 years now, and you had Jeff Hathaway as an AD, he's longtime athletic director in his business. And I believe Ed may have still been I don't know if he was still, but Ed McLaughlin, was he still at Niagara when you were there, or had he left?
Yeah,
so you've had a couple of ADs, and like I said, you're going to have a bright future. I know you're going to be a head coach somewhere, but if you had a chance, we could take Coach Mahalik out of this, but if you had a chance to work for anyone in men's college basketball, who would that be and why? And it's like, it could be AD, and I'm thinking you're going to be a head coach. It could be AD, or if you went to another high-level program as a head coach. So
wow.
With being a head coach or being an assistant.
That's awesome. I think I would take it probably from the coaching perspective. I don't have enough relationships with athletic directors out there to necessarily say, oh, you know what, I'd love to go work that guy. I've been lucky to be around some really good ones. From a coaching perspective, my mentor in the business is Phil Martelli. Don't want to speak on, necessarily what happened to him with the situation at my alma mater, but just having the opportunity to work for a mentor like that would be amazing. And he's such a good coach. He's been through so many situations. I think the amount that I could learn from him on a day-to-day basis, I've learned so much from him playing for him, and then just having him as a major part of my life over the last 15 years since I graduated. But getting to learn from him as a coach on a day-to-day basis, would be amazing. Obviously, there's tons of other coaches that you admire and could learn from and everything like that. But to work for Coach Martelli, I think would be the one.
Awesome. biggest accomplishment you have experienced since you have become a college coach? And I know winning the championship this year was huge. I'm going to this, you know, you were going to go to the NCAA tournament, but 2 days later. But, like, what's your biggest accomplishment?
You know, LB, I think it's almost more of the process of what it's looked like here at Hofstra, you know, and it's not, and it culminated in winning this year. But again, thinking back to when we took over this program, there was 4 players in the program. They were like all 6'6", 6'7" power forwards, and not necessarily our type of players. And we had to rebuild the entire program. We were able to do it our way because we had a lot of open scholarships, and we could build the team how we wanted to. And you think about all the success we've had since then, and 3 regular season championships, 3 championship games, all that stuff. It's been an amazing ride, you know, and you can't, you know, Sam Presti would say, trust the process, right? You can't forget about the process. And that's really what it's about. You know, if just winning that night in that championship game's amazing, but it means so much more because of everything else you've gone through. So I just think about the journey we've been here, the players that we've been around who have been amazing, you know, the coaching staff that I've been with, and being able to build Hofstra into a, you know, a regular, you know, one of the better teams in our conference, you know, on a regular basis, has been awesome. So just that process and building that up has been an amazing accomplishment to kind of get to where we've gotten today.
What movie or TV show title best describes your week?
Oh boy, that's a tough one, LB. And you know I'm not a movie guy. I remember you crushing me for not having seen The Usual Suspects or Carlito's Way. I remember we had those conversations way back at Hoop Group. I said, how did you not see that movie? So I am not a good movie or TV person. Oh man, you know what? The only one that comes to mind, because a lot of people have referenced it, especially during this time of quarantine and everything, is Groundhog Day. Every day in the last 3 months or so feels like the same day. So I guess I'll go with Groundhog Day for the last couple months.
Awesome. What was your favorite word or phrase? What's your favorite word or phrase?
I guess, you know, one thing I say a lot is, in and around practice and games and stuff like that, is make winning plays. You know, that's kind of like one of the taglines that I try to use a lot. You know, just helping these guys, remind them to do the little things that are important to influence winning. So I think that's probably something that I use a lot. You know, not every day speech, but certainly with the team and in practice.
Awesome. You've been around a lot of good coaches, so a lot of good people. But, like, what's the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
It's probably Rob Kennedy, back from our hoop group days. You know, a ton of great advice throughout the years. But you know, when he told me a couple of years ago, I don't know if we had lost a couple of games. It was the one year we were like around 500, but he said, well, if winning's better than losing, then just win. And I wanted to say, yeah, Rob, okay, sure, yeah. But, you know, like, the more I thought about that and I was like, well, you just have to do more to influence winning, right? So you have to recruit a little bit better, you know, do those things the right way. Are you going to work with your guys a little bit better? Are you going to be more prepared to make sure that you win, you know, so you don't go through kind of that pain when you lose games. So at first I was like, what? Of course, man. But, you know, longer that I sat on that and thought about that, I was like, well, it is pretty good advice. So I'll go with that one.
Awesome. Rob Kennedy. Like, what does success mean to you?
Success. You know, LB, and this has become such a buzzword, you know, recently, but it's all about the process and everything that we're doing on a day-to-day basis. You know, I haven't really shared this with many people, but when we got to the end of the championship game, and it's funny, you know, it's something that we've worked for a long time. And in my first year, you know, in the 10 years I've coached Division I, making the NCAA tournament. And so you get to that point and you want to celebrate. You're thinking about, oh, I'm going to celebrate. I'm going to climb up the ladder and cut down a net. And late in that game, there might have even been 10 seconds left. And I was like, I hope we get a good matchup so we can try and beat somebody. You know, I was already at that next step, you know. And maybe that's an issue of mine, that I don't get to enjoy the moment enough, that I'm always thinking like, okay, well, what's next? You know, what's the next part of the process? But I really think that's what it's about, you know. And now you think back to all the memories on how far along Jour Buies came, you know, during his career, or, you know, where we took the program from when we took it over 7 years ago to what it looks like today. You know, you think about the process and the success of Jour Buies graduating with a master's degree, you know, and all these guys graduating that might be the first person in their family to graduate. So, you know, just the whole process of that, being in and around college basketball, I think that's what success looks like for me, you know, because I have those moments where it's, you know, in the moment doesn't mean a whole lot, you know, maybe winning that championship. But when you look back at everything you've done or how you've helped, you know, young student athletes in their lives, then it kind of comes to and you say, well, you know, that's what real success really does look like.
Awesome answer, man. Mike, I know you love to be in the gym, you love to shoot, you like to run, you like to work out, but like, where's your happy place?
It's a good one. You know, maybe some of my happiest moments, LB, and you'll know this from being around, but after we win a home game, you know, my two sons, MJ and Ryan, they're 6 and 3. Now they're 6 and 3. Obviously, you know, throughout the course they've been younger, so they don't get to come to a lot of night games. So Saturday afternoons when we play, especially in conference play, you know, they're there Saturdays at 4 o'clock, and when we win, you know, they run down, and, you know, Coach Mihalik's great. He lets them come in the locker room and stuff like that. And after the game, they're running around on the court with all, you know, little kids, or they're dribbling a ball. You know, so all those moments, that might be the happy place. You know, seeing them in that moment and having them be part of that is pretty awesome. In addition to that, I would, you know, the Long Beach Boardwalk. I like to get out and go for a run, and, you know, run right along there when it's nice weather, you know, spring and summer. So I would say those are probably my two happy places.
Great. Two great answers, man. Mike, I know you're not a self-promoter. You know, you do great work, a lot of hard work. Always have. If you had to choose 3 adjectives to describe yourself, which would you choose?
I would definitely start with hardworking and passionate. You know, I think back to John Wooden's pyramid of success, you know, and having those as kind of the 2 cornerstones. And that's something I've tried to embody throughout my career. So I would definitely say those. A third one, maybe just driven. You know, I think I'm just so focused on trying to help our team prepare, helping these guys get better, helping myself be better, and driven to a high extent to try to do that. So similar to hardworking, I guess, but the driven is probably the third word I would use.
Well, 3 great ones, and that definitely describes you. What person and or event has had the most influence on your life?
That's be Coach Martelli. That's what comes to mind for me. You know, obviously an unbelievable mentor. You know, I went to St. Joe's just to go there as a student. You know, I was hoping to be a walk-on on the team and everything like that, but I wasn't a preferred walk-on. I had to try out my sophomore year and make the team. So him making the decision to put me on the team and be part of the unbelievable experiences that I had there, meeting my wife, you know, and then afterwards helped me get involved in coaching college basketball, giving me my first opportunity as the JV coach, helping me get to Wilkes, you know, the relationships that he helped me build throughout, and just being a mentor since then. So I would say, you know, I kind of owe it all to him.
That's a great guy, man. Great coach, even better person. And you know what? His Phil, as we all call him, Turk, he's going to be later on in the show as well. So,
good stuff. And Coach influenced me so much because, like you said, he's such a great person. The way he would connect with people, you know, not just as players, but people in the athletic department, people around campus, alums, fans, all that sort of stuff. It was just amazing, you know. Obviously everything he's done with the NABC, you know, so I think it was just such a big influence on me and the way that you could be a coach and impact so many lives.
Awesome. Knowing what you know now, Mike, you've been in it for a while now. So what would you tell your young self to prepare for as an assistant coach?
Not to have a whole lot of money for a while. You know, when you get involved, you know, I worked 3 years as a volunteer when I was starting to help out at St. Joe's. Then I went to Wilkes, then, you know, to Hoop Group, and up to Mount St. Mary's, Niagara. You know, I didn't really make a whole lot of money in my first 10 years, you know, and I think that's a really hard thing to go through when you're not making money and you see other people that you graduated with that aren't in coaching and just have a job, you know, they're making more money, they're taking vacations, they're buying new cars, you know, they have a lot more stuff that they can do, and you're not able to do that, you know, because one, you're probably busy because you're working or recruiting and doing stuff like that, and the second is, you know, you just haven't gotten to a place financially that a lot of those people are. Now you get to do what you love every day, so that's amazing, and then a lot of people would trade their experience for that. So I think that would definitely be one piece of advice. You know, second would definitely be networking. Getting out there and not just knowing who people are, that's certainly part of it, and who the players are in what we do in college basketball, but can you develop meaningful relationships with other college coaches, with high school guys, AU guys, kids, that type of stuff that's going to help you later on in your career. I think back to our time at the Hoop Group, and certainly you introduced me to most of those people, you know, and were the initial point of contact with that. But just getting to meet so many people in that realm, you know, kind of put you on the fast track to being more successful. So again, somebody, you know, my younger self, I would say, do as much of that stuff as you can, you know, get involved in those, you know, grassroots world, and put yourself in position to meet a lot of people and develop those relationships.
Awesome. Thank you again, Mike, for being a guest on the show and being unmasked. Thank you, viewers, for watching another great show. Stay tuned for the next guest as we get them unmasked. See you next time, and stay safe.